Hello, so today we are going to do this problem, add binary, which is part of Leetcode daily challenge. So basically we get two strings A and B, and we want to return the sum as a binary string. So A and B are just in binary like this. And so for example here, if you try it with 11, 1, then 1 and 1, that gives us 0, and we carry over 1, because in binary, right, you can have only 1, and this gives us 2, and so we carry over the 1. Basically 2 is represented as 1, 0, and so that's why we put 0 and carry over the 1. So when we carry over the 1, here again 1 and 1 was 0 and carry over a 1, and so at the end we have 1, 0, 0. So that's roughly the idea of the sum we are trying to do. So how do we solve this? Well, definitely, like, there are other ways. For example, in languages like Python, there is a very simple method to do it, which is just to convert the binary to an integer. So that, for example, convert, let's say, a equal to 11. We can convert it to an integer, and then convert b, which is like this, 1. Convert that to an integer, and then just add them together and convert them to a binary. That will give you the answer you want, but that's not ideal because it's easy to do in Python, but in other languages it may not be as easy as Python. So we want to do something more like that applies to more languages. So how do we do that? So the simple thing to do is just to do exactly what you will do if you were to do it by hand. So by hand, let's say this was A, we'd have B here, and we'd have 1, right? And so to do that, well, the first thing we want to do is pad with zeros the places that have a smaller length. So for example here, because we have this empty place, we pad it with 0. Okay, and now we can do the addition. So 1 and 1, that gives you 0, and we carry over 1, so we need to keep track of a carry. So initially it's 0, but then we carry over 1, because 1 and 1 it's 2, and so we have to represent it as 1, 0, and so we put 0 and carry over the 1, right? Yep. And so here we carry over the 1. Now again, 1 and 1, same thing as here, we put 0 and we carry over the 1. So now our carryover is 1. And then we have only the carryover, nothing here anymore, and so we just add the carryover, right? So that's one example of what will happen. If we take a look at this second example here with this A, and then we have a B that is like this, and so we need to keep track of the carryover. The carryover initially is 0, and so if we do the addition here, 0 and 1, that's just 1. So you can see also we do it from right to left, right? So we do it in reverse order of the string. So that's one thing to notice. Here we don't need to pad anything, so we just do the addition. 0 and 1, that's 1. 1 and 1, again 0, and we need to carry over 1. And so we need to represent that here. And now we do 0 and 0 is 0. We add the carryover, so we have 1. And now our carryover is 0 because we just applied our carryover, right? And so each time we need to update our carry. And now 1 and 1, it's 0 with carryover 1, and so it's like this. And that's exactly the answer that we have here, okay? So now what we did manually, we can just apply it in the code. And so how do we do that? Well, we definitely know that we need to pad the string like we did here. If we had also, for example, A is like 1, 1, 1, 0, and maybe B was just 1, then we need to pad over all of these with zeros, right? So that we can do the addition. And so that's what we are going to do here. But to make things easier, let's just make sure that that A is always maintained, that A is always smaller than B. So how do we do that? Bigger than the length of A is always bigger than B, so that what we need to pad is B, right? So how do we do that? Well, we can just, if it's smaller, then just switch the parameters, right? So if the length of A is smaller, then we just flip the parameter so that B is the first and A is the second. That way the first parameter is always the one with the highest length, right? Which means we always need to pad, we only need to pad B with zeros at all, right? And so to pad B with zeros, In Python, the simplest way to do it, let's say 1, is to use this rjust function where you give it the number. So let's say we want to fill up to the length 3 with zeros, right? For example. So here it will make the length 3 and by adding zeros to where there are no elements, right? But this is not in every language, so I would like to do something more generic here. So how do we do that? Well, first we need to find what's the difference between the length. We know that the length of A is bigger than the length of B, right? And so we just do length of A minus B. So we know that this is the difference. So this is how many zeros we need to add, right? And so to do that, well, we just say we need to add 0, a list of zeros like this, range of D, and we want to join it with, okay? So what this will do is, let's say if D is equal to 3, then if you take this, sorry, this is going to be 0 for range of D, and looks like we have a problem here. Let's say if we have 0, 0, and we do join here with these. Let's try it again. Yeah, because these are ints, so we need to map these to a string. So what I will do is str of x, right, for x in this, just to make sure. And now that should work. And so now if we go back to what we had here, we need this to be converted to str, right? So well, let's just actually say something like this, and that should work. Okay, so that's what we are going to do here. And so this is basically what we are going to pad with. And so we just need to insert it in the front of B, right? And so we can just say B is going to be equal to pad plus B, right? Because if the length was equal, then this D would be 0, and so we'll add nothing. If the length of B was bigger, right, than A, then we would have swapped the parameters, right? So here we need to return this. Okay, so now that we did the padding, now we can proceed to do this addition here. So how do we do it? Well, you can see, you saw here that we went from right to left. And so that's what we'll need to do here. So we'll need, and we associated each element with the one from, each element from A with the element from B. So we can sort of zip the two elements together. You could also do it with indices if you prefer. But I'll use zip here. So let's say we'll get position I and for B, and we'll just zip them, but in reverse order so that we can go from right to left. Okay, so to do that, well, just reverse A. That's in Python is reversing A, and we can reverse B as well, and we zip these together. And we need a variable to keep track of the carry, just like we did here. So to do that, let's just initialize it like that. Okay, so the new character is going to be the, so since these are characters, we need to add. So what I did here was add 0 and 1. So add the element of A to the element of B, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. But also each time I added the carry, right? And so that's exactly what we need to do here. Okay. Okay, so now what else do we need to do? We need to check. Well, if C was bigger or equal to 2, what does this mean, right? So that means, let's say we add 1 and 1, then it's 2, or we had a carryover and we add 1 and 1 and the carryover, so it's 3, right? So we have only these two cases. So if it's bigger than we know the carryover needs to be 1, right? We need to, so if it's bigger than or equal to 2, then it's either, C is either 2 or 3. If it's 2, then we need to put 0 and carry over 1. If it's 3, right, then we need to put 1 and carry 1. Right, because 3, it's 1, 1. Okay, and so that's what's happening here. So in both cases, we need to carry 1. So no matter what, with this case, we need to carry 1. So we update the carry to 1. But C is going to be what we add to this to our string. Our result string is going to depend on the whether it's 2 or 3. But one thing we need to have here is the result that we are going to return, which initially is just an empty string. Right, so this is what we want to return. since we are here, we are adding from right to left, right? We will get the string reversed, like in reverse order. And so we can actually here, to avoid getting it in reverse order, we can do res is equal to the new value plus res. Either that or just add it and then at the end reverse the string, right? So I'll do here the first approach. And so here we need to add the value that we get from this addition. What's that value? Well, that value is just either 1. So it's 1 if it's 3, otherwise it's 0. So that's exactly what we said here. Okay? And so it's 1 if c is equal to 3, otherwise it's 0. So this is the exact value that we need to add here. Okay? And so pretty simple there once you apply it on an example. Now otherwise that means that c is smaller than 2. So in this case, if c is smaller than 2, then we have only 2 cases. Either it can be 1 or 0. And so for that case, we don't have any carryover, so we just need to reset our carryover to be 0. And also the result, we are only going to add just 1 or 0, so just the value of c itself. So the other thing we need to make sure to do here is that the carryover may exceed the length of a and b. So for example, here 1 and 1 we have 0 and the carryover, 1 and 1 again, so 1 with the carryover, we have 0 and we have a carryover of 1. But traversing this string is done, so we'll exit this loop, but we'll have a carryover remaining that we need to add. And so we just need to check if we have a remaining carryover, we need to add it. And so we just convert it to a string and add it to the front of our string, right? And that should be it. So if we run this and submit, that passes our test cases. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for this problem. Please like and subscribe and see you on the next one.